Well, hello there, you amazing, beautiful, wonderful, brilliant, fantastic, flipping people, you. It's Tuesday, and this is video either one of two or two of two. I don't know, because I've not made my mind up which one I'm putting up yet first. I think this is probably going to be two of two. I hope you're all well. You're looking absolutely amazing, by the way. I've fixed the light. The Ford Transit in the background has been fixed. It's now running smooth like a purring Aston Martin. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the Idaho 4 case and the ties that bind. The ties that bind. I've been watching the so we call it camaraderie between A.R. Hayes and J. Ombre Pavarotti. And they've been talking about the Idaho 4 case and been talking about certain things. And I think the be-all and end-all is I think they pretty much agree on a massive amount of stuff. Some things they do, some things they don't. But I don't think either of them have bad intentions whatsoever. I believe that some things have got absolutely spot on, like perhaps I've got things spot on. And some things have perhaps not got spot on. They may have got them wrong, like I've got things wrong. And we will continue to get things right and get things wrong. The funny thing is, though, we don't know what's right and what's wrong. And nobody out there in the true crime niche, let's call it, knows what's right or what's wrong. We don't. We can speculate, we can assume, we can spitball, but we don't know. We genuinely don't know. We can tie anything into the Idaho 4 crime that we want because there is so much shit around it. And that's a sad thing. I know we've got people who are highly supportive and protective of Cara Northington, Xana Canodal's mum, because she had a troubled life. And some people have queried whether this troubled life could have spilled into the lives of these students. Is it a possibility? It is, sadly. And this is when we talk about the ties that bind, because there are things that tie this crime into the narcotics industry. Just is. There's nothing we can do about it. That's not bad on me. That's not bad on you guys. That's bad on the people who chose to take that path. It's just the way it is. And some people may want to be protective of people and say, you can't say that. That's bad. You can't say that. These people are in pain. Sadly, that's the life they chose. And when you choose a certain type of life, or you get embroiled in this type of life, and you have children, there is a potential that there could be repercussions. And there has been, and there will continue to be, situations that result in the death of family members who are nothing to do with the nefarious acts of those who they are connected to. That's the sad world we live in. And when we look at the Idaho 4 case as a whole, we have an accused person, which is Brian Kohberger. Brian Christopher Kohberger, the PhD student from Washington State University. He's the man who's been fingered for the crime. And I don't mean the good kind of fingering. This is the bad kind of fingering. Fingering that could end up killing him. He could be dead. Could you imagine getting fingered to death? Ha! Horrendous thought. But look, all jokes aside, we have an accused person who seemingly has absolutely no fucking connection. So when we talk about ties that bind, there are no ties. There's nothing that ties Brian Kohberger into this crime at all, apart from a knife sheath that was given to us on a platter, a silver dish with a ribbon and a bow. There you go. Done. Because ultimately that is genuinely the only fucking thing that seems to tie him to this crime scene, doesn't it? And we have seen law enforcement who have come forward and said that this sort of shit don't happen. This was like a fucking golden goose. And then I think to myself, if it was such a golden goose and it was such a clear-cut, done deal, this was a fuck up of the century, then why has everything since then been so fucking convoluted, so complex, just a complete and utter fucking mess with things trying to be hidden, having to request discovery. I'm not doing that 18 fucking times. But you can get my point. this isn't straightforward. This isn't clear cut. And I wonder whether this isn't about it's not clear cut because they've got this golden goose and they can get it and they can convict it. It's that they've got to try and sever the ties that bind everything else to it to make him make more sense, because at the moment he doesn't make sense. He doesn't make sense at all. And there are things on the peripheral of these crimes that make a lot more sense. We've literally got murders. We've got deaths, we've got narcotics, we've got connections to businesses that were involved in severing people from their money to the tune of millions. We've got families who seemingly have money, they have means, and yet they are manipulating, they are tugging on the heartstrings of the people who are around them to make them pay for the shit that they can ultimately pay for themselves. And we're seeing it with our eyes fucking wide open. We've got front row fucking seats, which shows you the mentality of some people. But it's that old, well, if we can, we should. If we can, we should. So that's the mentality of the people that we've got around this. But we have a frat boy fight. Now. A frat boy fight, this spilling, as time progresses and time goes on, I've had time, I say, don't I? Put it in the oven, let it bake. Well, that's, to me, is on fucking fire. I can't see that being feasible. I can't see it being feasible. I know there's been a conversation recently. I did catch A.R. Hayes. They were talking about the K-bar knife, the use of the K-bar knife. I did a video months ago that spoke about how that knife was used, the specific way in which that was used, and statements that Kathy Mabbutt had raised about the potential for, was it Kathy Mabbutt had spoken about the injuries, and then off the back end of what she said, Steve Gonsalves and the injuries don't match, the wounds don't match, that would seemingly suggest multiple weapons potentially. And I said, this isn't about multiple weapons. This is about someone who was fucking au fait with using that K-bar knife, which brings you back to a potential military or trained connection in terms of how do you use it, which does then tie back into the likes of Jack Showalter when they have, is it the ROTC training, which would potentially involve some degree of hand-to-hand combat training. So it does tie into that, but then that could potentially very weakly lead into Brian Kohberger, who we know that he did some degree of military training as well. But we don't know to what degree, and we do have a story that would seemingly suggest that this motherfucker couldn't even fly a fish. There you go. It is what it is. But when we talk about ties that bind, look, the biggest ties and the biggest binds in the Idaho 4 case has always be and will continue to be, until this trial proves anything else, it is narcotics. However you look at it, whatever you want to say, however you want to protect certain people or feel it's unfair to say that what they did could have potentially had repercussions that led to what did, it is what it is. It is what it is. You have multiple people that are tied to narcotics. And we know that narcotics in the narcotics world very regularly leads to things being hidden, people taking backhanders, corrupt operations, and they don't want these things being seen. They don't want the public to know what is happening, especially if there is a situation where that could backfire and cause issues to the machine that is their way of living, the way in which they operate on a daily basis, the functionality of the people coming into the university and buying and paying for things, and ultimately people getting rich off the back end of it. You have an issue such as this where you uncover some massive thing that could lead to people being killed just very quickly, going to put a black mark on your fucking name that will cost you money. So when we talk about ties that bind, unless this trial can absolutely, undeniably, beyond a reasonable doubt, prove that Brian Kohberger was tied into these people, and they can prove that he was there, then I will always believe that this was a narcotic situation, a targeted attack, where the person who entered into this room didn't have to go upstairs. Didn't have to. They chose to. And they chose to because they were going after very specific people. Now, there are some other things in the background, such as Hudson Lindau, Hannah Clary. All of these things are, again, ties that bind and link Washington with Moscow. It's there. There are links. There are ties that bind. But is that enough? Are those ties enough to have this as a repercussion? Who knows? Who knows? But what I do know, and I think the likes of A.R. Hayes agrees with, and Pavarotti agrees with, is this weren't some love story. This weren't some fucking sad puppy who had become obsessed with a female in that house. Because if that was the case, this crime would have gone very fucking different. What happened in that house on that night would have happened differently. It would have happened differently. It didn't have to happen that way. If this was about Kaylee, if this was about Maddie, this could have just been an execution of that individual and been done and out. This was systematic, it was strategic, it was planned, and it was over multiple elements in that room. Let me know what you think, and I'll catch you all tomorrow in the live. I've actually reached out to A.R. Hayes. If someone sees him, tell him to give me an email.